Let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayam Udirayet
Tato Jayam Udirayet
Shrinvatam Swakatah Krishna
Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna
Punyashravana Kirtana
Punyashravana Kirtanaha
Vidyantasto Hiya Bhadrani
Hridyantastu hi abhadrani
Vidhunoti Suhritsatam
vidhunoti suhritsatam
Ashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu
nashtaprayesh bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
bhagavati uttama shloke
Bhavati Nayistike
bhakti naishtike
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
krishnaya vasudevaya
Kinandanaya Cha
devaki nandanaya cha
Upakumaraya
nandagopakumaraya
Govindaya Namo Namaha
Govindaya namo namaha.
Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The final chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. It has 40 verses. So we will read the first section. So in this section, primarily we learn how Parikshit, a great devotee, receives the curse. We can understand from his way of receiving the curse how a great devotee responds in calamities. So he regrets for his action and he gracefully accepts the curse and renounces the world like nothing. So we'll read the verses. One second only. Yeah. The appearance of Śukadeva Gosvāmī. Suta Uvacha.
Suta Uvacha.
Mahipatistvatha Tatkarma Gahyam.
Mahipatistva atatatam
Vichintayan Atma Kritam Sudurmana.
Vichintayanatma Kritam
Vichintayanatmakritam sudurmana
Aho Maya Nichamanaryavad Kritam.
Maya nichamanaryavad kritam
Niragasi Brahmani Guda Tejasi.
Niragasi
Niragasi
Brahmani
brahmani gura tejasi.
Please read translation.
Sri Suta Goswami said, while returning home, the king Maharaja Parikshit felt that the act he had committed against the faultless and powerful Brahmana was heinous and uncivilized. Consequently, he was distressed.
So this is the nature of a good-hearted person. So whenever a wrong action is performed, which is unexpected, they immediately regret. They don't justify it, they regret it. So Mahipati means the great king, right? He's the emperor of the entire world. So he accepted, aho maya necham anarya vatkritam. So whatever act I did is necham. Necham means very unacceptable or heinous act. And it's uncivilized, anarya vatkritam. I have done such an heinous, unacceptable, uncivilized act against this great sage. Because the sage represents Brahmanical culture. So I have insulted by my action the Brahmana and Brahmanical culture. So he was very distressed for his actions. Yeah, please read, Prabhu.
The pious king regretted his accidental improper treatment of the powerful Brahmana, who was faultless. Such repentance is natural for a good man like the king, and such repentance delivers a devotee from all kinds of sins accidentally committed. The devotees are naturally faultless. Accidental sins committed by devotee are sincerely regretted, and by the grace of the Lord, all sins unwillingly committed by devotee are burnt in the fire of repentance.
So the point here is important. Accidental sins committed by a devotee are sincerely regretted by the devotee, and by the grace of the Lord, all sins unwillingly committed by a devotee are burnt in the fire of repentance. So if an accidental sin is performed by a devotee, by his repentance, the reactions of that sinful activity will be burnt. So it's a practical lesson. One should never justify his incorrect actions. So just by regretting itself, its sinful reaction will be gone. Dhruvam tato me kritadeva helanad.
Dhruvam tato me kritadeva helana.
Durachayam vyasanam natin dirghat.
Duratyayam
Vyasanam
vasanam
nati dirghat.
natirghat.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Tadastu
Tadastu
kamam
kamam
hiyaga
yagani
niskritaya me.
nishkritaya me.
Yatha na kuryam punareva madha.
Yathana
Yatana kuryam
kuryam
punareva
punareva
madha.
madha.
So he not only accepted his mistake, but he actually wanted punishment for his action that he performed. So that is the nature of a sincere devotee, right? So let's read this. Please read.
King Parikshit thought, due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire, without a reservation, that the calamity come now, for in this way I may be freed of sinful action and not commit such an offense again.
So this reflects the consciousness of a great devotee. So he wanted some calamity to come upon him as soon as possible. Nati dirghat means slow. Nati dirghat means not too slow. Right? Immediately. Tadastu kama. I desire. Kama means I desire that aghanistkritayame means he want to be freed from the sinful reactions. So he thinks he want first thing is he wanted to take the responsibility for the mistake he has committed. That is clear. And he wanted to how so? Because if the sinful reactions comes upon me, his family and his kingdom will not be affected by his sinful actions. One's sinful actions can also affect one's family if he doesn't act responsibly. For example, somebody makes a mistake. Sometimes the whole family suffers because the person who committed mistake somebody takes a debt, right? For example, he doesn't clear. Then the family also becomes responsible if he doesn't take the responsibility and fix the problem, correct? So similarly, even sinful actions, as the head of the family, now if he does not own it responsibly, it will go affect his family members as well as his kingdom. He's the king of the entire world. So he was very happy that for whatever mistake he has done, if the reactions come upon him, he'll be relieved of the sinful reactions, right? So he desires for the calamity to come upon him, right? Generally, when somebody commits mistakes, what do? They pray that the reactions don't come upon them. They're afraid to face the punishment. Take the example of Indra. When Indra committed the sin of flooding Vrindavan, what did he do? He came to Krishna out of fear. Of course, he was regretful for his action, but he came with a cow in front of him so that Krishna is merciful, and his attitude is that, okay, maybe now I will be punished. I should protect myself. That is slightly different from the attitude shown by Parikshit Maharaj here. He wanted the calamity to come upon right now. For this way, I may be freed of the sinful actions and not commit such an offense again. So what happened with Indra? So Acharyas say that Indra committed the offense, and he came and paid the obeisances, and he offered many wonderful praise to Lord Krishna. But again, the incident of Parijata happened in the later years, when Lord Krishna tried to take Parijata from the Swarga planet. He again resisted and fought with Krishna. So whatever prayers he offered during Govardhana episode were not really sincere. That's what Acharya said. So, and you can see here the attitude of Parikshit Maharaj. He wanted to take the calamity upon him, and so that he will be freed from sinful action. And see, the second desire he had is not commit the sinful offense again. So that's not the attitude of Indra, for example. Yeah, so these are very subtle points, and they make a lot of difference in how a devotee is, for example, we may have committed a lot of sinful actions, but how many of us are really willing to accept the reactions fully for them, right? So we can learn from these lessons. Another great example is King Chitraketu, right? King Chitraketu, he was the king of Vidyadhara planet, where there are so many Vidyadharas. They were going around and singing the songs on Lord Vishnu. And once upon a time, they see Lord Shiva talking to many great sages. In that assembly, there was Brahma, Narada, everybody is there. Many renounced outer sages were there, who were all his followers. And Mother Parvati was right in his lap. He was holding her and talking to these great sages. So at that time, King Chitraketu was passing by, and he sees this incident. So he feels, what will ordinary people think if Lord Shiva keeps his wife in his, the great sages may not misunderstand, but if ordinary people were to hear about this pastime, what do they think? That was his concern. So he provided some feedback to Lord Shiva. And so Lord Shiva was very kind. He didn't he immediately accepted the feedback, but Mother Parvati was offended by that action. How dare this person this person give feedback to my husband, when even the great sages like Brahma, great personalities like Brahma and other Sanat Kumaras, all of these renounced order people are there. How come this person has the daring to give feedback to my husband? That's what Mother Parvati thinks. And then as soon as he understood Chitraketu, he didn't give feedback and go away. He actually goes, he understands that Mother Parvati was offended, so he goes and begs forgiveness from her. At which time Mother Parvati says, "Oh son, what makes you think that you can give this feedback to me? I curse you to become a demon, a Rakshasa in your next life." So, and this was very, it was very similar to how Parikshit Maharaj gets cursed. And as you know, devotees are never take any offense for such mistakes. So he actually clarifies his position that, "Oh Mother Parvati, I never understood or never took that the action that Lord Shiva is performing is wrong. I only wanted the Lokajana or ordinary people to not misunderstand Lord Shiva for his this kind of situation. They should not misunderstand. That was the only reason. But I did not mean any offense. But if you mean some offense, if you mean that I have committed some offense, let me take the punishment for it." So see the attitude of the devotee. So, and he gracefully accepts and pays obeisances to Mother Parvati and leaves the place. And he becomes the demon, right? Vritrasura. So after that incident, Lord Shiva actually sees the glory of devotee. And there was an entire chapter dedicated for it, because the reason these are very two parallel pastimes. So I just wanted to cover that aspect because it's very relevant. So this is the chapter. No, not this. Yeah, 6th canto, 17th chapter. So in this, so there is this beautiful verse that talks about the attitude of a great devotee, right? So Chitraketu would not take any offense. He did not. He is, he's being a great devotee. He can counter curse, but he doesn't do any of that. He just accepts and gracefully leaves. And he considers that as as the desire of the Lord. So now, after seeing this incident, Lord Shiva talks this entire chapter about how devotees are great, right? How they actually accept calamities that come upon them. So in one of these verses, very touching, very prominent, we can all read together, or maybe we can Narayana para sarve
Narayana para sarve
akutasthana bibhyati
nakutascha bibyati
vargapavarga narakesva
svargapavarganarkeshu
tulyarda darshina.
apitulyarthadarshina.
Devotees solely engaged in the devotion service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. So for a devotee, curse is not a curse because they do not get negatively impacted. So in this case, Parikshit Maharaj gracefully accepted the form of a demon, and in that farm also, he was constantly remembering Krishna. And the whole episode of his fighting with demigods was described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and how he leaves the body, and the teachings that he speaks in Srimad Bhagavatam were historical. How he always remembered Krishna even in the form of a demon, right? So curse is not really a curse, right? Even in the story of Queen Kunti in first canto, 8th chapter, right? So Vipadaha santu satsasvat tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yatsyat apunar bhavadarshanam. Devotees, in fact, desire calamities again and again so that they can see the Supreme Lord again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. So this is that. So they don't care. The external curse is not really material. They don't consider that as any significant thing. Yeah. So he really wished the calamity to come upon him. That is the nature of a great devotee. We can clearly see how he is excelled as a devotee in his consciousness. Yeah, please read, Prabhu.
Maharaj Parikshit knew all this, and thus he concluded that his insulting a powerful Brahman was certainly to be punished by the laws of the Lord, and he was expecting something very difficult in the very near future. He therefore desired the imminent calamities to fall on him and not on his family members. A man's personal misconduct affects all his family members. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit desired the calamity to fall on him alone. By suffering personally, he would be restrained from future sins, and at the same time, the sin which he had committed would be counteracted so that his descendants would not suffer. That is the way a responsible devotee thinks.
So another lesson is one should be always protective of Brahmana culture. So in this case, there was violation of that. There was an insult to Brahmana. So that was the reason he was punished, and he accepted that gracefully. So this is a responsible king. Adhyaiva rajyam balamriddha kosham prakopita brahma kulanalo me. Dahatva abhadrasya punarname bhut. Papi yashidhir dvijadeva gobhyaha. Yeah, please read. Anyone?
I am uncivilized and sinful. I am uncivilized and sinful due to my neglect of Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection. Therefore, I wish that my kingdom, strength, and riches burn up immediately by the fire of the Brahmana's wrath, so that in the future I may not be guided by such inauspicious attitudes. Purport.
Yeah,
Progressive human civilization is based on Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and protection of cows. All economic development of the state by trade, commerce, agriculture, and industries must be fully utilized in relation to the above principles. Otherwise, all so-called economic development becomes a source of degradation. Cow protection means feeding the Brahmanical culture, which leads towards God consciousness, and thus perfection of human civilization is achieved. The age of Kali aims at killing the higher principles of life. And although Maharaj Parikshit strongly resisted the domination of the personality of Kali within the world, the influence of the age of Kali came at an opportune moment, and even a strong king like Maharaj Parikshit was induced to disregard the Brahmanical culture due to a slight provocation of hunger and thirst.
Mhm. So we can see here, there are three things that are important for progressive human civilization. It begins with cow protection. When cows are protected, they will give milk and other ingredients for performance of yajnas and other, basically to maintain Brahmanical culture, and which will help increase the God consciousness in human civilization. Right? So these three are very connected and related. And now, in somehow, the Maharaj Parikshit feels that, even though Maharaj Parikshit was able to stop Kali's influence in his kingdom, at an opportune time, Kali affected him, whereby he disregarded the Brahmanical culture due to provocation of hunger and thirst. So that's what happened, and the net result is, he was cursed. Yeah, please read this also.
Where wealth and strength are not engaged in the advancement of Brahmanical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection, the state and home are surely doomed by providence. If we want peace and prosperity in the world, we should take lessons from this verse. Every state and every home must endeavor to advance the cause of Brahmanical culture for self-purification, God consciousness for self-realization, and cow protection for getting sufficient milk and the best food to continue a perfect civilization.
So these three are very important. Brahmanical culture will purify our heart, right? And then God consciousness by practicing, Navaveda Bhakti. So that will help in self-realization. And then cow protection will help both Brahmanical culture and God, self-realization, both purification as well as self-realization. So that is perfect civilization. Yeah. So we can see here the responsibility, the responsible reaction or responsible way of accepting this whole situation by Maharaj Parikshit. He wanted to take the reactions for it. So the other thing we can learn from this is, you can see here, Maharaj Parikshit was, when he was a baby in the womb of his mother, as a small, not even born, right? He was still a baby in the womb of his mother, at which time Lord Krishna protected from the greatest of the fighting instrument in the world, Brahmastra, the greatest astra in the world, that is Brahmastra. So Lord, when he desired, protected him from the greatest astra in the entire existence. And what was his size? He's just like a, like a baby in the womb. Is completely helpless, at which time he was protected by Lord. Now he is the greatest of all the kings in the entire world. He is the number one king, and now he is cursed by a small kid. In a way, it is, one can take it as like an insult, because how can such a great king, first of all, get influenced by his basic material needs like thirst and hunger. And on top of it, he cursed, he insulted a Brahmana. And now he is punished by a kid. And when he was the greatest in the entire world, right, being the king of the world. But it did not matter for Parikshit how all of this is orchestrated. He just accepts the situation as it is. He did not complain. Oh no, it is such an insulting thing that I am now cursed by a small baby boy, kid. He didn't feel like that. He just owned the responsibility for his action, and he wanted to get the reaction upon himself. So that is the nature of a great devotee. Right? He didn't, whatever action I did doesn't matter. I did wrong, and I'm responsible for it, and I'll take whatever it means. Right? So he didn't want his inauspicious attitude to continue. Very practical lessons.
So Prabhuji, in our day-to-day living, like even like for example job, when we do certain activities, we try to give data points or why I'm doing this, why I have to do this. So everybody says that you have to explain the reason behind your acts or something so that people can understand where you're coming from and others.
Mhm.
So like not sure whether that is like justifying yourself or justifying. I'm not talking about just wrongdoing, but in general also. If like I'm not meeting deadlines, for example, and then I'm trying to justify why I'm not meeting deadlines, but sometimes happens that I cannot explain earlier, so I have to sometimes explain once the deadline has passed and why I couldn't meet. So not sure whether we have to tune ourselves to accept the situation or how the practical implementation should be.
So the main thing to, at least my understanding, is that the main thing is how you accept the situation, right? In both the situations of Maharaj Chitraketu or King Parikshit, they accepted in a Krishna conscious way, right? They did not take the offense. They felt that what they did was wrong, right? So they accepted.
Yes.
So that part should be very clear. And of course, you can still clarify. So the reason Chitraketu, he could have just accepted curse and left from there, right? But he went to Mother Parvati and clarified his position. Went there and clarified, "Hey, I did not really mean that what Lord Shiva is doing wrong. I only wanted people to not misunderstand Lord Shiva. That was the only, and I 100% believe that what is happening here is not wrong. I 100% accept that. And for whatever I did, the feedback I gave, I'm ready to accept the punishment, right? So that is the attitude. So they're always accepting or they are behaving. So in this case, they are emotionally trying to satisfy the person who is actually cursing, for example. Right? So in the case of it will come in this actually in the next few verses. So in this case, Maharaj Parikshit would not even go to Samikrishi to. So Samikrishi sends one of his disciple to go in king about the curse, so that he will be prepared, right, for his last.
Yes.
So when he sends that, Maharaj Parikshit receives the message. It's exactly like Chitraketu. He was very jubilant because now he knows that he can completely focus on Krishna, right? And he was happy that he received the curse right away without, he accepts that responsibly. And now, the second thing is, he considers that Samika Rishi sent this message through his disciple, and he did not come by himself, it means that the message was conveyed in a very like regretful tone. So how much Samik Rishi must be feeling sad about it, that
Yes.
calamity was received upon this great king for his very simple act of putting, it's not even worth giving any punishment. So he understood immediately by receiving the message. He understood that Samik Rishi will feel very, is already very sad if I go and beg apologies again that I have done some mistake upon you. He would feel even more dejected. So in both cases, they were acting in a way such that the other person will emotionally, so they basically understood the emotions of the other person and satisfied them in the right way. Right? So Parikshit Maharaj, by not talking, by not going and begging apologies, because he already was feeling sad, he doesn't want to further. So you can see they received punishment, and they are not considerate about their situation. They are considerate about the other person. So look at this. Look at this consciousness. How a great devotee is there, right?
Yes.
So this is if Bhagavatam is learned, these are the lessons we have to learn.
Yes.
So both of them reacted in a way such that in spite of in spite of being in a greater calamity, they responded and behaved in such a way that the other person was emotionally satisfied. Right?
Yes.
So in our case also, like whatever comes upon us, we have to be Krishna conscious in that situation. So that is the lesson we can learn from this. You can clarify, you can so that the other person understands the situation, but do that in a way that you are still Krishna conscious, right? So your ultimate goal is very clear, right? To be subservient.
Yes. Thank you, Guruji.
Sachintaya nittam ata shrinodhyata mune sutokto nirrittis tatshana
Mune
Sutato
takshakakakya. Okay, anyway. Sasadu mene nachire na takshaka nalam prasaktasya virakti karanam.
Nalam prasaktasya virakti karanam.
Yeah, please read.
While the king was thus repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of a snake bird, occasioned by curse spoken by the sage's son. The king accepted this as good news, for it would of his indifference toward worldly things.
This is how a great devotee accepts every situation.
Shall I read?
So when Prabhupada received the news that his factory was on fire and he lost all his wealth, it is at a time he was almost 55 years. It is not a time to lose one's wealth completely, because you cannot even earn back. So that is what happened with Prabhupada. And you know what he said? So he said, he immediately laughed at that situation. He did not feel morose, sad, or any negative reaction. He understood this must be the great mercy, special mercy of the Lord, that he wanted me to get closer to him, become detached from the material situations I am in. So that is the special arrangement of Lord Krishna. so that I become closer to him, closer to his lotus feet. So pure devotees exactly behave the same way. So here we can see from the behavior of Parikshit Maharaj. King accepted this as good news. How many of us can do that? Right? For it would be the cause of his indifference towards worldly things. Because he's now, he'll be indifferent because he's now about to die. So he has no more. So one may think, how such a great devotee gets such a punishment as death, untimely death? Is it not important that the world be ruled by such great kings? One can say that. But imagine from the position of Parikshit Maharaj, he was a pure devotee who is qualified to be part of Goloka. Why should he meddle in the material world with people with material consciousness? Why should he be situated in the material world? Now, just by doing this, Lord Krishna was speeding up his path back to spiritual world. So we should see that way. So we should not see only the material conditions to as a devotee who understands the spiritual world and material world, one should clearly not just see a situation only from the material value of it. That is the main lesson we can learn. If a devotee is going through a lot of material difficulty in the material world, but his consciousness is purely situated at the lotus feet of the Lord, it is not at all a curse on his life. It is not at all a material situation in his life, right? It's not negative conditioning on his life. One should clearly understand this aspect. Because Lord directly takes care of his devotees. Right? So we can see it's so many historical incidents like this. If suppose Prabhupada did not have to go through that like loss of wealth, he might still be connected to his family and busy with his family affairs. That incident actually inspired him to be connected to Krishna more and more. So, and these material calamities, when they happen in the life of a pure devotee, they actually bring him closer to Krishna. That's what happened with Parikshit. That's what happened with Chitraketu. That's what happened with Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj was punished to become a deer, but his consciousness was protected. Was that a curse? It's not a curse. It is not, because he was even in the body of a deer, he was remembering his, he was remembering holy name and his past life fully. So he was totally leading a devotional life, even as a deer. It's not a curse. So it is an arrangement of the Lord to show for others great examples of these great devotees and how they respond in difficult situations. Jesus Christ, he was punished just like Parikshit Maharaj. He was punished for no good reason, but he accepted the punishment gracefully, and he was killed. He accepted gracefully. He did not complain. He was no repentance for his death. Haridas Thakur, another great story. He was punished to be beaten in 27 marketplaces by the king for chanting the holy name. He gracefully accepted. He went through the punishment. He was beaten in 27 marketplaces. One can wonder how such a thing can happen. How a pure devotee can be punished like that. It happened. The devotee was fully Krishna conscious. He did not consider, why, Lord, why so much difficulty in my life? He didn't say that, because he's fully understands, he's fully in line with Krishna. He understands Krishna will not give any punishment that is not good for me. He will not put me in any situation that is not good for me. This is in my best interest, whatever it may be. And he accepts that gracefully. So that is a great devotee. That is the nature of a pure devotee. So these are the lessons that we can learn from Bhagavatam. If we don't learn these lessons, Bhagavatam study is no good. So we have to be, mindful of these lessons. These are the, main takeaways. Yeah, please read.
Prabhuji, one question. So, looking at what happened to Prabhupada, sometimes we may have that realization that, yeah, it's time that we have to cut the knots and be far from this material attachment. But the family might not be on the same plane. Like for what happened to Prabhupada, was the family also aligned that, yeah, this is happening for good, and let him now move on and take on to more spiritual
Actually,
life.
that is not the case with Prabhupada. Prabhupada, his family, his kids were not married yet,
Hmm.
financially not very well situated, because Prabhupada had to leave in the middle. So the understanding is, at least we may not be ready at that level, right? So our case may be different from Prabhupada's situation. So Prabhupada, so Lord wanted him to engage in a higher service in Prabhupada's case, and Prabhupada fully understood the mission of the Lord. Okay, his situation in the material world, he understood. So he took up that way. It doesn't mean we can just imitate Prabhupada and give up our situations, right? So it was arranged in that way for Prabhupada, and he got that realization immediately, and he had to give up. And it's not in a convenience. The situation is definitely not convenient for family. That is 100% sure. But the understanding is Krishna will take care. Krishna took care of everything for Prabhupada, for his family. Everything went fine after that also, right? So we're all, we consider this family as a big deal, but this is just a temporary arrangement. We have lived through millions of lifetimes, and in each lifetime we had snakes family, we had elephants family, we had tigers family, we had families of every kind. So this family consideration is not a big consideration. In fact, in the totality of situation, we may think, this is my family, but that is all it. Like, how long is the family situation is going to last, right? It's just a matter of 50-60 years max. So that's not a big consideration. But in any case, it's not that one can give up his responsibility in that way, considering that so one has to act responsibly, and when the time comes, right, according to inspiration and situation, one may have to take that in the proper Krishna conscious way, right? In that way, one would act correctly, right? So everybody's situation is different, and we act under guidance, right? We don't randomly take a decision by ourselves. So we'll consult devotees, and because we accept their guidance as Krishna's will and act accordingly. We won't go by, because our situation, if we are not pure enough, we may not take the situation in the correct way, and we may do incorrect action. So we always consult other sadhus and devotees so that we act correctly.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, please read.
The path of perfection frees one from all material attachments, and thus one becomes fit to enter into the spiritual kingdom. Therefore, those who are materially poverty-stricken are better candidates than those who are materially prosperous. Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee of the Lord and a bona fide candidate for entering into the kingdom of God. But even though he was so, his material assets as the emperor of the world were setbacks to perfect attainment of his rightful status as one of the associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky. As a devotee of the Lord, he could understand that the cursing of the Brahmana boy, although unwise, was a blessing upon him, being the cause of detachment from worldly affairs, both political and social. Samika Muni Also, after regretting the incident, conveyed the news to the king as a matter of duty so that the king would be able to prepare himself to go back to Godhead. Shamika Muni sent news to the king that foolish Shringi, his son, although a powerful Brahmana boy, unfortunately had misused his spiritual power by cursing the king unwarrantedly.
Yeah. So he sent this message through a disciple of his. So see, the punishment came in a very like not so grand way. His birth was grand in a way, right? His death was grand because he was hearing Bhagavatam continuously. But the punishment that is leading to his death appears somewhat, how can such a great king who was protected by Lord, was, the grandson of great devotee Arjuna, be punished like that by a, foolish Brahmana boy in a very awkward situation, punishes for no good reason, a sentence of death. But doesn't matter for a pure devotee, just accepts as, because we don't blame the instrument, right? One should not blame the instrument of karma. Whatever comes upon oneself, one should accept gracefully. There is no need. So instruments can be anybody, right? So whatever we get through in our life is basically so everybody who gives, somebody praises us, or somebody blasts us, or speaks negative of us, or punishes us, but they're all just instruments. What is the real cause of my suffering is my own karma, my own either prarabdha or sanchit karma or whatever past, could be anything. So whatever we get, we should never blast the instrument. Instrument is, so in this case Shringi is just an instrument, right? So whatever he gets is actually ordained by Lord. That is how a pure devotee is. Yeah, please read.
The life of a human being is a chance to prepare oneself to go back to Godhead or to get rid of the material existence, the repetition of birth and death. Thus, in the system of Varnashrama Dharma, every man and woman is trained for this purpose. In other words, the system of Varnashrama Dharma is known as Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal occupation.
This is all matters. This is the only thing that matters. I am in the material world. Am I preparing myself to go back from this material world to the spiritual world? And am I stopping the process of repetition of birth and death? That is the only thing matters for anybody living in the material world. Everything else is detail, doesn't really matter. So your job, your family situation, your anything related to your material life is immaterial. As long as you are in the material world, the only thing that matters is how are your endeavors towards spiritual world. How are you able to make progress on a daily basis? So that's the only thing that matters in the material world. Are you able to remember the holy name in all situations and all circumstances? Are you taking shelter of Lord? Are you taking shelter of Krishna? Are you taking shelter of devotees? That's all matters. Are you receiving devotee association? Are you able to practice devotion service sincerely? Are you able to make progress in devotion life? That is the only thing that matters in the material world. Everything else is just detail. Doesn't matter. How you die, whether it's auspicious or inauspicious, you died in an accident, or doesn't matter. What do you remember at the time of death? That's what matters, right? So we should not worry about anything else, right? Sometimes one may lose money, sometimes one may gain money, some may gain respect, some may lose respect. Doesn't matter. Everything. Am I able to take it in the right consciousness? That's what matters. There is nothing auspicious in the material world. There is nothing. Somebody, loses his job. Doesn't matter. Am I able to continue my Krishna consciousness sincerely? Right? So that's what matters.
Prabhuji, one small question, Prabhuji. So in this purport, Prabhupada is saying like poverty stricken is a like a kind of a boon, so that he can progress spiritually instead of being materially prosperous. But in some purports we hear like a yogi, if he falls down, he will get a chance of getting birth in a rich aristocratic family or a Brahmana family, so that he can again continue his devotional service. Because when he's provided with richness, he need not hanker for any money or food, so that he can spend that time for devotional service. So both these things are contradictory. How can we understand this one, Prabhuji?
A very good question. So there are two categories. One is meagerly advanced. Meagerly advanced means only like say 30% progress in spiritual life. In that case, he will be born in a family, rich family,
Okay.
so that his material problems are. It doesn't mean that he will get good devotee parents or right from his birth he will eat prasadam. It doesn't mean that.
Okay.
The second case where a devotee is highly advanced, is almost 80% done, but he didn't reach the 100% goal. So then in that case, he will be born in the family of a great devotee.
Okay.
Right? So that case is more conducive for spiritual growth, more than the first one. So there are two problems, right? When you are in the material world, you need to solve material problems, and then you need to solve spiritual problems, right? Meaning you need to connect. So for those who are partially advanced, because they're only partially advanced, it means their consciousness is still materially inclined a lot. Their immediate goal is material sufficiency. So they will consider, I should be materially well situated, then only I can perform devotion service. So for them, what is ideal is being born in a aristocratic family, so that they will not be bothered by material life. For a devotee who is 80% advanced, he is already like convinced he's on his path to back to Godhead. Even if his family is poor, for example, Prabhupada says, I am born to a family of Vaishnavas, because from my childhood, I was trained spiritually by my father, Gaur Mohan. So that is more advanced. So even if material situations are bad, like in case of Prabhupada, he was never, he had the best position materially in terms of job. He's very intelligent, Prabhupada, but he was never materially successful. Whatever he tried attempts, he would always fall short of it. So, but as soon as he makes in a spiritual endeavor, he will succeed grandly. So that's what happened repeatedly in Prabhupada's life. So depending on situation, Krishna puts one in different circumstances that is more conducive for his consciousness.
Okay. Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, absolute devotee. In the case of even Chitraketu, he was pure. So Krishna puts them in the the most difficult circumstances, like just losing life, or getting cursed badly, and by the in the other case it's like cursed by Parvati, Mother Parvati is not an easy thing to take. Yeah. So but devotee is always fixed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Krishna. Ato vihaye amum chalokam.
Atho
Ato vihaye mamam
Marshitau he yataya purastat.
Vimarshito he taya purastat.
Krishna grisevam adimanyamana.
Krishnangrisevam adimanyamana
Upavisat prayam amarchanadyam.
Upavishat prayam amartyanadyam.
Please read.
Maharaj Parikshit sat down firmly on the banks of the Ganges to concentrate his mind in Krishna consciousness, rejecting all other practices of self-realization. because transcendental loving service to Krishna is the greatest achievement, superseding all other methods.
So he immediately sat down to practice devotion service. Right? So he sat down on the bank of Ganges, but actually in the purport, Prabhupada clarifies he sat down near Yamuna because that is closer to Hastinapur. Sat down firmly on the banks of Ganges to concentrate his mind in Krishna consciousness, rejecting all other practices of self-realization, because transcendental loving service to Krishna is the greatest achievement. So he wanted to spend his remaining 7 days in remembrance of Lord Krishna. Yeah, please read, Mataji.
The devotees are told by the Lord and his representatives, the spiritual masters or acharyas, that not one of the planets within all the innumerable universes is suitable for the residential purposes of a devotee. The devotee always desires to go back home, back to Godhead, just to become one of the associates of the Lord in the capacity of servitor, friend, parent, or conjugal lover of the Lord, either in one of the innumerable Vaikuntha planets or in Goloka Vrindavana, the planet of Lord Sri Krishna.
So the devotee is not interested in improving his material life. For example, many people living in the, like say developing countries, they dream about coming to America so that they can have a better human life, better life, right? But a devotee always thinks about how he can serve Lord Krishna in the spiritual world, in the association of great devotees. How they can sing the glory. They're always eager to go back to Godhead. Just like a poverty-stricken person dreams of getting rich and enjoying the life in a better way, with all the riches, in a better country or a better situation. So similarly, a devotee always thinks about how I can engage myself in the service of Lord in the spiritual world, right? This is a great desire to have. It's nothing wrong. So in that way, he is always focused on Krishna. But in fact, a pure devotee does not consider where he is. He is always desiring only to remember in every situation Krishna. Right? So that is the consciousness of a pure devotee. Okay, let's read this verse, and I think one more verse quickly. Yavailasastri tulasi vimishra Nangrirenvabhya adhikambu netri Natilokan ubhayatra sheshan Stamna seve tamarishamana
The river by which the king sat to fast carries the most auspicious water, which is mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord and tulsi leaves. Therefore, that water sanctifies the three worlds, inside and outside, and even sanctifies Lord Shiva and other demigods. Consequently, everyone who is destined to die must take shelter of this river.
This is glorification of the river by which Maharaj Parikshit sat down. So that water, Ganga water, is mixed with tulsi leaves. Therefore, that water sanctifies everybody, is mentioned here. So one must take shelter of this river.
Maharaj Parikshit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maharaj Parikshit, just after receiving the news of his death within 7 days, at once retired from family life and shifted himself to the sacred bank of the Yamuna river. Generally, it is said that the king took shelter on the bank of Ganges, but according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the king took shelter on the bank of Yamuna. Srila Jiva Goswami's statement appears to be more accurate because of the geographical situation.
So, one thing we should understand is when Maharaj Parikshit received this curse, he immediately became jubilant. The verse mentions he became jubilant. It is like, for example, you are in India, suddenly you received the news that your visa is granted to visit America. Will you be happy or not? Obviously very happy, because that was your desire to go. That was the place you want to go. So because a pure devotee is fully convinced about Krishna's existence and the spiritual world, they know where their destination is. They just have a short time to prepare. Just like when you are coming to America, you will be very much preparing, buying all the things that you want to carry here. Now Parikshit Maharaj is preparing by hearing about Krishna for the next 7 days. So he was not at all bothered about death. Death is just a transition to spiritual world. That is his consideration. So why should he be sad? He was going to a better place than where he is right now. For the people of the material world who have no clue about spiritual world, all of this seems like a fairy tale, and they may think this is a bad thing. How can a person receive curse and die out of a snake bite, in an untimely way? But that is absolutely not the way Parikshit Maharaj saw. So he was only getting closer to Krishna. And for him, it is like, for a materialist, coming to America is such a dream. He was always looking for. So similarly, relieving from the situation and entering full spiritual realm is the great dream of Maharaj Parikshit. And so he received the whole thing. So devotees who are spiritually conscious like this, fully conscious of Krishna's existence and spiritual world, why would they be at all disturbed by material situations of any kind? Imagine, right? If you are so conscious of Krishna, how can any material situation disturb you? It's not an artificial restraint to face the material situation for them. It is a jubilant. Any difficulty is also taken as because nothing in my life would come without the grant of the Supreme Lord. So it must be for my good. I may not know how it is good, but it is for my good. So this is a glorification of the river Ganga. Right? Yeah. Let's read the next one. Iti vyavachijya cha sa pandaveya prayopavesham prativishnu padyam tadhau mukundangrim ananya bhavo Nivrato mukta samasta sangha. Now he is fully preparing himself. You see, Ananya Bhava. Dadhau Mukunda Angrim. Right? So he was fully focused on Mukunda. Now let's read this translation. Anyone?
Thus the king, go ahead, Mataji.
Okay, Mataji, go ahead. Thank you.
Thus the king, the worthy descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all and sat on the Ganges bank to fast until death and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So, freeing himself from all kinds of associations and attachments, he accepted the vows of a sage.
So he immediately sat down to give himself 100% to lotus feet of Krishna, Mukunda Angrim. Ananya, without any deviation, 100% focus. So to get a notice like this is also a boom, because he knows exactly how much time he has. That is in a way a great boon for him. So how many of us, most people get death as an accident, and it is not easy to be Krishna conscious, right? So in this case, Parikshit Maharaj had this notice, so he immediately utilized 100% for the right purpose. So he accepted the voice of a sage, giving up all association and attachment immediately. Yeah, please read.
The conditions of the material world are so made that one has to commit sins willingly or unwillingly. And the best example is Maharaj Parikshit himself, who was a recognized sinless, pious king. But he also became a victim of an offense, even though he was ever unwilling to commit such a mistake. He was cursed also, but because he was a great devotee of the Lord, even such reverses of life became favorable. The principle is that one should not willingly commit any sin in his life and should constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord without deviation. Only in such a mood will the Lord help the devotee make regular progress toward the path of liberation and thus attain the lotus feet of the Lord. Even if there are accidental sins committed by the devotee, the Lord saves the surrendered soul from all sins as confirmed in all scriptures.
So Lord will forgive the devotee even if he commits mistakes accidentally. We understand, right? Yeah, so we'll end the class here. Any questions or comments? So today is a very lot of powerful lessons we learn from how a devotee responds to situations in life, right? So from the life of Parikshit Maharaj, life of King Chitraketu.
One quick question, Prabhu. So regarding the statement which you made previously, we should make progress in the spiritual life. So my question is, how can oneself assess ourselves, like, are we making a real progress in the spiritual life? How can we assess ourselves?
We will know whether are we more materially conscious or Krishna conscious, right? So if there is a situation that comes in our life, and that distracts us from Krishna consciousness, you are not able to. One basic external measure is, are you able to follow 4 regulative principles, and the do's are, are you able to chant like you were doing before? How much ever, if you are chanting 8 rounds before, are you able to continue that? That is a basic test. And then internally also you can see whether are you able to take the situation in a Krishna conscious way, right? So that is how you see whether you are able to respond in a Krishna conscious way to a situation. And when we can't, that is when we seek the guidance of advanced devotees, and like spiritual masters, or those who have been more senior to us, and take their inputs, and that definitely helps us to set our situation right, because they have gone through many situations like ours. So they will guide us on how to see the situation in a Krishna conscious way. It is easier if we associate with devotees, right? Generally, sometimes people don't approach anybody, and they just struggle within their situation, right? Without help, taking any guidance, help. That is not recommended. That is the whole purpose of association. Have devotee association. We should take guidance, advice from others, so that will protect us. That is the arrangement of Lord for us, for our protection, for our Krishna consciousness. So we should utilize that.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.